I do want to get a little more perspective now on the Pope's death. We're joined now by Rocco Palmo, who's an archdiocese reporter and historian. I appreciate you joining us this morning. I think our reporter, Melanie Elwick, just very succinctly described some of the things that he brought to the church, to the role. But we're asking this morning those who are close to the Vatican or close to the Pope, their thoughts on what you think in this case he'll be most remembered for.
Oh, well, Steve, I mean, we could go on probably till the funeral, which is probably going to be Saturday, until, just doing the legacy. But interestingly, in terms of Washington, because of the political situation, but also because of the situation of the local church in Washington, the Pope has had an outsized impact on Catholic life in the capital. Of course, he's named 2 archbishops there, the most recent of whom, Cardinal McElroy, just arrived, was installed in March. But significantly, and this is going to be one of the top-line things on any American legacy piece for Francis, was the appointment and then elevation to Cardinal of Cardinal Wilton Gregory, who just retired, who became the first African-American cardinal, the first non-white cardinal of any kind in this country. And interestingly, too, you have now 2 cardinals who are eligible to vote for a new pope who, since they're both younger in 80, Cardinal Gregory, Cardinal McElroy, going over for a conclave. So we could say that between that and, again, the political situation, hours after the Holy Father met, the late Holy Father met Vice President Vance, really the road to the papacy, uniquely for the U.S., runs through Washington.
Rocco, we've spoken so much about his concern for the poor and marginalized groups. I want to talk more about the timing of his death, because just yesterday I was watching video, out of the Vatican of him greeting thousands of the faithful there, and then to hear of his passing overnight. Can you talk about how up until the very end he still wanted to be there for the people?
Well, Marissa, I've always maintained that, much like myself, the Pope is a stubborn Italian, and so I have a unique vantage on that kind of personality. And even from when he was in the hospital, there was every indication that he was not giving up easily. And, just the fact that and I could see going into Holy Week, even on Palm Sunday, being wheeled out just to try and force out saying, happy Palm Sunday, happy Holy Week to everyone at the end of the Mass that a cardinal had been delegated to celebrate in St. Peter's Square. He was, if this was going to happen, he was going on his own terms, and he wouldn't let his condition keep him from pushing himself too hard. And this has been the fear ever since he got out of the hospital. His doctors called for a 2-month recuperation. Well, he appeared after leaving the hospital in public 4 times in the first week. So again, that raised the alarm, but obviously something suddenly must have happened overnight into this morning. And, by shock, here we are. But again, consistent with who he is and what he wanted, he died with his boots on, being out among the crowd. That was the first time he's been in the Pope-mobile since yesterday. So again, it's kind of jarring. With John Paul II, we had a couple days of imminent preparation the last time a papal death happened in 2005. The fact that we're, here literally less than 24 hours after seeing him for the last time and seeing him at close range it's going to take some time to process.
Rocco, we'll talk about more of this later in this week as to what might come next, who might come next. But, this is opposed to what Marissa was talking about. When you talk about certain issues, LGBTQ, or when you talk about some of the political stances, this was the first Pope with social media, first Pope to have an Instagram account, right? So we've had these pushes that have been away from previous popes. We don't know what happens in conclave, although a lot of people saw a movie recently that they think they know what happens in conclave.
They think.
They think.
Yes.
They think.
They think.
With the way the Catholic Church is going right now, the bottom line is, do you think that the next Pope might be somebody who continues along that line, or maybe goes back to more conservative values?
Well, again, Steve, the problem with that framing is that, you're looking at the church politically in a secular sense. The church is not left or right. The church has principles. Some of them fall on the left side of the spectrum, some of them fall on the right side of the spectrum. And they don't come from, our own minds. They come from the gospel, the teaching of Jesus Christ. Every pope has his emphases. And so Francis emphasizing inclusion has not nullified the teaching of the church. Francis emphasizing, peace has not nullified the need for nations to self-defense and have, borders, et cetera. But I think everything's on a sliding scale. The way the Cardinals look at this is not looking at a person. You don't start with the person. You start with the question of what is the situation of the church? And it's like question 1A, what is the situation of the church in the world? Meaning in terms of looking for world peace or where the church can help countries find peace and find values. And you put an identikit together, like a skill set, and then you figure out who among us can do it. Now, of course, nobody comes from central casting or is invented in a lab, but here you have the biggest group of electors going in that we'll ever have, 138. Until Francis, the limit was kept by law at 120. He chose to expand it. So now they have to find 20 more bedrooms for cardinals during the conclave while sealing them away from the world. You know, everybody has to give up their phones, their electronic devices, their signal jammers put in under the Sistine Chapel to keep it from being bugged. But only now, I think, as much as cardinal electors, you always have the question in the back of your mind, when that day comes, well, you judge by the moment. And only now, like, the fear is real. I mean, last time when Pope Benedict retired, I remember speaking to a cardinal that night who just was sobbing uncontrollably on the phone because he said, okay, now this is real, I have to do this. And you live in fear of it. It's not something you look forward to. And by law, the conclave must begin within 15 to 20 days from today. Today triggers what's called the Sede Vacante, the vacancy of the church, the vacancy of Rome. And so the cardinals will have to be there, obviously, for a funeral, which, again, probably Friday, Saturday, or Monday next week. There were called 9 days of mourning, the Novembiales, before the conclave can begin. But obviously, with jet travel, it's not like 100 years ago when you had cardinals who had to take steamships over across the. And there were actually American cardinals before who got to Rome after the conclave had begun, and they were shut out. They weren't allowed in. So thankfully, we don't have that issue this time. But it's, again, with a very diverse college. The other thing Francis has done is diversify it. I think we have something like 35 countries from around the globe that have never had a cardinal go into a conclave before.
First of all, it's fascinating perspective, Rocco. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for sharing that knowledge. We'll chat with you again soon. Rocco Palmo is an Archdiocese reporter, historian, obviously speaking his craft very eloquently. So, Rocco, thank you very much for that. We'll see you again in a little bit.
Thank you, guys.
As Rocco said, this begins a 9-day period of mourning before they can
and hopefully Rocco will hear from him
move
again.
on to the next steps. Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, you can stick with us here on Fox 5. We have much more on Pope Francis and what's next for the Catholic Church on Fox Local. If you don't have the app, just scan that QR code on your screen. It will keep you up to date. We'll be right back.